Mary is the writer unleashed. And truly she believes that your story matters. She truly believes that journaling about your life is a way to heal. It's a way to bring your life back in balance. And she is the writing mentor to help you do that and to truly get your story out to the world. And with that in mind, let's welcome Mary Knippel to the stage. You're welcome, darling. There you go.
Do you ever feel like life is one thing after another? And raise your hand if you've ever felt like a character in someone else's story. I'd like to acknowledge Rebecca for her vision, for inviting me to be on stage today. And I'd like to acknowledge all of you for taking time out of your busy lives. You know, Saturdays are precious, and you're here with us. And there's a reason why we're all in this room. I believe in inspiration, compassion, and synchronicity. So it's not a coincidence that we're here together. I have wanted to be a writer my entire life, but I was told it was not practical, as others have been told. But I've always been convinced that there was a story that I needed to tell, just as I'm convinced that there's a story that you are destined to tell. And that story is meant to impact someone else. And if you don't tell that story, they won't have the life that they are meant to have. I grew up in a small farming community in Minnesota, and my hero was Irma Bombeck. I thought, if I could write like that, I had a future. And the fact that my brothers and I would fight over who got to read her first and say, "Did you read what she said?" Because she wrote about real life. And eventually, I went to college to be a journalist so that I could write about real life and help other people recognize that what was their ordinary life was extraordinary. And I know we promised secrets about living a handcrafted life. And so one of my secrets is to invite you to consider being a hero in someone else's story. Because when you are raising them up, that illuminates who you are and what you bring to the world. I have been privileged to write for our magazines and to do interviews and help people discover what it is that they are bringing to the world. And more often than not, we'll go deeper in the conversation and they'll go, "Nobody's ever asked me that before. I've never talked about that before." And that always gives me goosebumps because I know that I got to a level that they might not have been aware that was something that they were destined to share with the world. When I talk about, life experiences bring you to where we are today, of the major 5 stressors in your life, loss of job, loss of a loved one, major move, catastrophic illness, and divorce. I've had all of them at least twice, except for the divorce part. Next month, we'll be celebrating our 47th wedding anniversary. And I'm especially happy to be on stage with you today because this year has been one for the books. I became a grandma 3 weeks early, but she knew what she was doing because when she was 8 days old, her mama had a stroke. So I've been not as visible as I had been before because I went to be granny nanny. And it just makes you aware of what you think is, oh, people have babies all the time. But 8 days later, you don't expect that kind of thing will happen. And as extraordinary as that is, I believe that we all have something that has changed the trajectory of our life and helped us put things into perspective of the story that you are here to deliver, the difference you are here to make. And I know we were promising more than one secret, so here's another secret. For you to be the one your people are looking for, you need to be willing to be the hero in someone else's story. And you need to be the hero in your story with heart and grace. And no one can invite you to be the hero except you. Now, the baby is amazing, and my daughter is healing, but it's a long process. And when I correlate that with how we step into the life we think we're going to lead and then the life that we end up leading, there's an opportunity for us to be vulnerable and be brilliant at the same time. That we own how we react to the circumstances and what we do with those circumstances. There's been a lot of talk about action today. And that's what has to happen. One of my bonus secrets is to be writing things down, to take pen in hand, to have a conversation on paper with what your thoughts are, and to make plans for how you're going to react and act. And a strategy around journaling is that you make a commitment to have a writing practice, just the way you would show up at the gym consistently, the way you would show up at yoga practice consistently. That you decide what time of day you're going to do this for 5, 10, 15 minutes. You'd be surprised what can happen in 5 minutes. I like to light a candle and play the same music every time. I always have a cup of tea. And I'll sit in the same spot. And if I'm not sitting in the same spot, I will describe my surroundings so that I'm centered. And it's almost like a trigger so that my mind and your handwriting, for those of you who can't write with longhand, then you do what you do. But it's a direct connection between your head and your heart when you're doing it longhand. And that is how I have done personally and professional writing well, I've kept a journal since I was 11. I used to hide it from one of my brothers who wanted to see what I was writing about. And when you're 11, you're writing about what was on TV last night and who do you have a crush on and, that kind of thing. Nothing earth-shattering. The poems that I was copying down out of magazines. But it was one of those things that he loved to do because he loved to tease me. And he's the reason why the first time I was a real speaker. And I'm so glad that the tears are coming because I wouldn't be authentic if I wasn't crying on stage. Was when he passed away unexpectedly, I ended up not only writing his eulogy, but delivering it. So, another life experience that never would have imagined. But it was an opportunity for me to grow into that dream I had of being a speaker and having my family recognize me as a writer. And I have been working on my memoir for over 10 years. Talk about life happening in between. My catastrophic illness was breast cancer twice. And writing was one way, a major way that I coped with what was going on in my life. And I turned it into a memoir and a self-help book so that there are prescriptive, or it's referred to as prescriptive nonfiction because it's part memoir and it's self-help as well. There are writing prompts at the end of every essay so that you begin to write your own story. And I can't emphasize enough the fact that I'm committed to you knowing that your story matters. And there's someone waiting for your story. That you already have made a difference in this world by being who you are. But if you're not visible in sharing that story, then you're not having the impact that you could have. You're not shining your light, and you're not being the bright star that the world needs. Because we are all designed to make a difference. We all come into this world with a mission. And there are times when we feel like we're living someone else's life because we're adhering to their agenda. We become the wife, the mom, the teacher, the daughter, and at times feel invisible. I know there were times where I felt that way, and it wasn't until I had the breast cancer that it was just like my wake-up call, the first wake-up call. And then my mother passed away, and I thought, okay, this is my next wake-up call. And so being a grandma and now with the catastrophic illness of my daughter, every life event alters who we are, and how we cope with it shows who we are as well. And I wanted to let you know how we could keep in touch. My offer today is that I would love to have a virtual tea with you, to sit down and talk about what it is that you want to say to the world. And if you don't know what to say, then I will use my 30 years as a journalist to ask you questions. So you don't have to worry about, what am I going to say? We're going to have a conversation, and I will take care of all of that. And in the little graphic that's on the sheet that everybody got, there's a phone number in there, and you can text that number. You call that number and you text, put story in the text line, and that will send you right to my calendar. Or if you want to talk to me today, I'll be at my table. And I wanted to leave you with this plea that you don't die with your story inside you. That there's someone waiting for it. Your story matters because you matter. I care that you are heard and seen as the brilliant, wonderful human beings that you are.